Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast. I'm glad you're here. Today, I'm discussing PR strategy with Robbie Harper from Blue Bridge PR. Let's get into it. I am excited to have Robbie Harper from Blue Bridge PR on today. Robbie and I actually went to school together back in the late 2000s. I think we graduated about a year apart from each other. And then about 15 years later, our paths crossed again when I walked into a local coffee shop back in his hometown and the town that I moved back to. And since then, we, kind of rekindled our friendship and we realized that a lot of things that we do overlap. So we worked with a lot of the same clients, and I've been able to see him work and him me. So I was excited when I had a chance to bring him on. I can say that Robbie's a very skilled PR professional and helping executives build their personal brands and working with companies as well. I've personally witnessed the work that he's done for his clients and the results that have come from it, and I can confidently say that he's got the chops. So again, I was excited to bring him on and talk about how companies can use PR for growth. Welcome to the podcast, Robbie.
Thanks. Excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to some PR questions today.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me also remind you, we're talking about small to mid-sized growing companies, CEOs and their marketing teams that are listening to this. And they're, if they're listening to this episode, they're probably interested in have either done and failed at PR or haven't explored PR. So they're, again, exploring that idea of like, what can PR do for our company or maybe even a executive leader's brand as they're trying to do more on LinkedIn or, that kind of thing. So why don't you first give just a quick background on how you got into helping executives with personal branding. So that'll sort of set the stage, give them context to your ideas.
Yeah. So just I'll give a brief background on how I got started. When I first started working in PR, I worked for I would say a medium-sized agency, small to medium, and they were, I would say 90% of their clients are law firms. So more like corporate law firms, multiple offices, like tons of attorneys. And kind of my job was to help these attorneys get media attention based upon their kind of niche practices that they were doing. Like, some were in cyber law, some were in, workers' compensation law, just, very, very niche and targeted practices. And so the media attention that they needed to have that to basically position them as experts in those certain areas. So for instance, what someone that's like cyber law, I don't know, it's been probably 7 or 8 years ago, there were all of these data breaches that were with Target and PF Chang's and just all of these companies that had these data breaches. And so they were looking for somebody, media outlets were looking for somebody to be able to speak to that. And so, so I pitched, a few attorneys, and basically just positioning them as experts in their areas. And so that's really where, and since I've started my company, I don't necessarily just work with attorneys. I work with a bunch of different types of industries, but it's really, everybody's an expert at something, and it's really 9 times out of 10, there's a business owner who they're confident enough to be able to address content based upon what it is that their focus is. And so that's really where PR and the personal branding kind of overlap. I mean, they don't necessarily overlap, but they complement each other. These PR, especially media relations, which is the PR that I focus on, is it's just media attention. It's just, there's other aspects of PR, but
Right.
true media relations, it's, interviews with reporters and byline articles that somebody can write, and so getting that in front of the right audience who will just elevate their business and their personal brand.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Like I said, I've seen a lot of the work you've done, and the outcome of that work is kind of broad. I've seen where, I know you've shared with me some of your client results of kind of broadly that people have been able to build their business on the back of getting noticed in certain trade publications, or specifically, or broader publications. And then of course it also has provided a leverage point for them to leverage inside of some of the other marketing efforts they're doing too. I'm curious what you think the current role is that PR plays in the growth of a company right now.
Um, I think it it plays a part. It plays a part, however much somebody wants it to play a part. I mean, it's really
Mhm.
what you want to get out of it, and you can utilize it at any time during business. I mean, even if you're a solopreneur, you can use PR. You can write articles, you can write guest blog posts, you can be on podcasts such as this. You can. There's so many things that you can
Yeah.
do to position yourself as an expert. I mean,
Mhm.
you've had other guests, and we'll continue to have more guests who they're they may not be a PR expert, but it may be banking or whatever. And
Sure.
I mean, at any given point, the main thing about it, where it intersects with personal branding, is that it builds trust. It's the factor that the trust factor that is so important, that if somebody talks to Lee Murray and he's been in a marketing publication or has a podcast, or has written articles for something else, then there's a little bit of that trust element that comes up in their mind and in their perception of who you are. So it can
Right.
help anybody at any given time. And, and it's something that people can do on their own. I mean, there's a bit of a learning curve to it to do it really well, where, somebody like my business can really target in on that. But I think that, there are definitely things that you can do now that, and that you can implement, and it just builds momentum from there. It's not. I always say to my clients that I start out with, one placement isn't going to necessarily um, make you an overnight success. There's a lot of other elements that go into it, but it's um, the recurring thing out there that, somebody is in the Orlando Business Journal or the Wall Street Journal or even the local newspaper over and over again. It's that repetition that builds the perception in someone's mind that, yeah, they are an expert. Like, they know what they're talking about. These reporters are talking to them for a reason. And
Yeah.
you can do that at any time, any time, in
Yeah. True.
any level of business, no matter if you're starting out or you know you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah. The way I think of PR is in kind of two ways. One is amplification of what you're currently doing at whatever level, and then a leverage point for what you want to do. So I have a colleague. Another experience I've had outside of working with you is I got a colleague that I have worked closely with, or stayed in touch with, and he hired someone to handle his PR for him exclusively because he saw it was a priority for him, right, to build his personal brand. And over the last, I don't know, couple of years, again back to the repetition point, he has added a lot of logos or business magazines, marketing magazines, different industry specific publications to his um, credibility that he now has on LinkedIn, on his website, and other places. And what's so cool that I've seen happen is now that he has that credibility or the trust that you're talking about that's built immediately when someone doesn't know you and then they see that, oh, you have all this stuff that obviously these people thought highly enough of you to consider your thoughts credible, they can come out of nowhere and see you. And of course, it can't just be that. It's got to be, like you said, a lot of other factors that play in. But they can see you and build trust quickly. So like the velocity in which you can build trust with a buyer is exponential when you have sort of this backlog of public relation type of work in the mix. And just to bring it around to like to insert it into more a bigger marketing strategy. Now that you have that, you can leverage it so you can drive people to a conversion point, right? So like a lot of things that I'll help my clients with is helping them think through what their buyers really are, the needs they're trying to solve, like the problems they have, and creating these conversion points, call it a workshop, webinar, some type of an event that you're driving towards. And if someone comes out of the blue and they haven't been following you, right, but now they kind of peek their head into your ecosystem of the content you've created, and they see all of this stuff that you've done from a PR standpoint, the velocity at which they are going to convert is much higher than if they have to have a big question mark in their mind as well. They posted this article or they posted this blog post and that was pretty insightful, and they seem pretty intelligent on LinkedIn, and I like the way their website looks, but they have this third party credibility there. Immediately that factor of trust is built, and now they could be a conversion point at that event, which I think is amazing.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the trust factor, if you come across somebody that's written a book, um, that automatically like elevates somebody in others' minds. And
Mhm.
with PR, I mean, it doesn't have to be a book. I mean, that's a huge thing. But just under that, I mean, if you are regularly getting media attention, um, yeah, it's funny in the marketing funnel where, a lot of people think PR is just general awareness, which it can be.
Mhm.
But further down in that funnel, when somebody sees it, if they see you for the first time, it's going to, like you said, build, it's got that trust, but it's going to move them one step closer to buying or
Mhm.
utilizing your service or whatever that may be. It it just moves them further down the funnel. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing. And then the other benefit is that among your current network, your network of LinkedIn followers, your Twitter or email followers, that kind of thing, when they start seeing you in the media more and more
Mhm.
frequently, they're going to be a megaphone for um, the people they're connected with, because they not only do they already
Right.
follow you and they trust you to a certain extent, but when they see that you have media placements in credible places, then it's just going to magnify, and they're going to kind of naturally and more of a grassroots type thing, you'll get more followers and possibly more customers.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting way to approach it because um, what you're saying is that your social presence and engagement can underscore anything you do with PR and vice versa. So, you're really building, as I like to think about it, like an ecosystem of content that people can participate in and observe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of, it's good to think about, like, what results are you going to get from PR? Well, I mean, you're probably going to get more results than you may have thought traditionally. But it's what PR is going to do for you in the ecosystem of everything else you're doing. It's not a singular, siloed type of thing. So I'm interested too. Because we've talked a lot about this. Like, you've worked with companies, and you've done a lot of PR work with executives and for company brands. What have you seen that's worked, like, to actually add growth to a company, specifically related to PR?
Well, one thing that works, as far as an approach, a lot of people think that PR is just, sending out press releases in a
Mm-hmm.
shotgun approach, which that does have some merit, and has its own place. I think with, people that pick up press releases from like an SEO perspective, but really where it works with my clients has been targeted media pitches, to where um, somebody that is the CEO of a construction company, architecture and construction company, for example, um, you know, putting out, kind of a press release announcing something that's newsworthy of their newest client or that kind of thing. Sometimes that helps, but more importantly, like, what is it that they can speak to their industry or their audience, um, and how, and targeting those outlets and those writers and those influencers that can amplify that message. And so a lot of times what I
Mm-hmm.
do, I mean, it's just a simple email to somebody that is a good match and would cover that person, or you know listen to what they have to say, and just saying, introducing them to somebody in the media, whoever that is, and saying, this, and this are things that are good story ideas. And this is somebody that can, I'm kind of oversimplifying it here, but this is somebody that can
Sure.
speak to that. Would you like to talk to them? And a lot of times, if it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense, they're, I mean, I've gotten some relationships with reporters and such, that they know me well enough that they know that I'm not going to bring somebody that's not a good fit. So they're going to pay attention to who it is, and they'll tell me if they don't think it's the right
Mm-hmm.
fit or not. But a lot of times it's like, yeah, I mean, I'll see what they have to say. So it's being very targeted, and trying to build a relationship as much as you can with people in the media. But you know, um, a lot of times, in PR, there's sort of some unwritten guidelines and stuff that we do,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times that's somebody that I don't know. It's a reporter, an editor that I've never connected with, but I've done the research to say on what they
Sure.
cover, and then I will bring this client to them, to their attention, that I may not have a relationship with them, but uh, if it's somebody that is definitely not a good fit, that I should know better, then that's not a good way to build a relationship with a reporter, because they're gonna block me, and not I'm not gonna be able to get out of the starting gate ever again. So there's a fine line. But that's what works. It's just it's getting in front of the right person with the right message that's mutually beneficial to whoever's covering, whoever would be covering that person or individual, or that content that they would be talking about.
Right. And, we talked about strategy a little bit, but I think that in addition to the strategy that you bring to the table, I think it's also that network of journalists or reporters that you can call on at a moment's notice, because you're, as you mentioned, you're always constantly adding people to that list, and there's a lot of value to the relationship that's there. I mean, hence the traditional word agency, right? I mean, that's really what you are, is that intermediary to the client, and saying, I may not know the right reporter or journalist, but I'll reach out and know how to handle that conversation. But a lot of times you will, you'll have that connection. I think there's a lot of value in having, pretty quick connection to a publication, or like a mainstream type of outlet. But it makes me think too, where we are today. Even, I mean, that's why we're here. We're on a podcast, right? Like, there's a lot of podcasters out there that are looking for guests. There's a lot of people out there that need to be on podcasts because they need to share their expertise in these niche um, communities that exist on Spotify and Overcast and Apple Podcast and other places. Is that something that you do for your clients? Is helping them, navigate that podcasting world? Because to me, it seems like a very similar thing, where you're building a network of podcasters are looking for these type of guests, like you are with journalists. How do
Mm-hmm.
you approach that?
So it's a little bit different, but the short answer is yes. That is we're talking about niche audiences, and podcasting is a medium now that, unlike radio, which radio was just, kind of literally broadcasting the
Mm-hmm.
message. Podcasting, it's so narrow and so, that's the good thing about it, is that you can find a podcast that is you probably the right audience for you or for your company. And so, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in an approach to somebody that's a podcaster, like, so somebody like you, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to a journalist, where I would approach a
Okay.
journalist a little more formal. There's a little bit more, in a way, more formal. When I email a journalist, it's like, there's kind of certain vernacular that, you kind of need to
Yeah.
use, or kind of at least know of a little bit. I mean, some journalists are going to be forgiving
Sure.
if, just an average business owner reaches out to them. I mean, they'll
Yeah.
they'll know that. But somebody that's a podcaster, they're usually just looking to fill content. They're looking to find somebody,
Right.
and you don't have to be like, have this perfect pitch and this and that. It's a little more laid back in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people in the PR world lose sight of that, that they try
Mm-hmm.
to formalize this pitch to, um, like they would to pitch to a reporter for the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. And with podcasters, you don't have to do that. It's just, hey,
Yeah.
listen to a couple episodes, do your homework, and kind of look at and listen to the content that they're putting out, and then reach out and just say, hey, I've got somebody. Here's his website. Here's his LinkedIn page. Here are some things that, and somebody else can do this too. Like, you can do this on your own.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
you got to know where to look. But
Sure.
being a PR agency, I mean, we have tools and resources that make that a lot easier, to where, whether it's podcasters, whether it's bloggers, whether it's, traditional journalists, we have access to media databases that have a lot of that information. That these databases comb
Right.
through, not just the internet or newspapers or magazines, but also podcast links and that kind of thing. And, there's contact information. I will say, when reaching out to podcasters, most podcasts have if you go to the page, it kind of spells it out for you. When you go to a
Mm-hmm.
certain podcast, like a homepage or whatever, it pretty much spells out what the podcast is about, and the journey that they're on. So as
Mhm.
long as you can bring somebody to the table, even if it's yourself, that can help that podcaster tell that story and explore that journey,
Right.
you're in. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a done deal. And so,
that's right.
but it's in a lot of ways it's easier for podcasters. People don't think about it. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's literally
Sure.
spelled out on their
Yeah.
sites.
Yeah. So, okay, then that's some practical advice right there. As a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to do a little bit of your own PR, you can just go
Right.
to your favorite podcasters, and maybe if they're in the millions of views or downloads, they won't pay attention to you. But there's someone out there. You never know. I mean, you never know who really needs more guests on their show, depending on how their show's set up. Reach out, like Robbie's saying, go look it up and say, hey, I think I'd be a good guest, and here's why. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's putting the time in and sending those emails and reaching out to them and doing that is where you're going to get the
Mm-hmm.
results, just like it is with kind of any marketing effort. So
Right.
you were talking about them doing it themselves, kind of as a sidebar. And I remember not too long ago you posted something, maybe it was on your site or on LinkedIn or something, where you talked about, if you want to basically do this for yourself, here's how you do it. Am I
Mm-hmm.
remembering that correctly? Where can people
Yeah.
find that? So, like, because I'm thinking about that business owner is like, I just want to know more about it, but I don't really want to talk to anybody. I just want to kind of see how this whole thing works because I want to explore it, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to do it on my own. And if it hits a roadblock, I'll hire somebody. But I thought that was great that you sort of just put the formula out there and let people see, the odds behind the
Yeah.
curtain.
Yeah. Um, that was an email I think I sent out. And I will post that on, I think it was on my personal website on robbieharper.com, ROBBIEHARPER. So I think that that particular post you're talking about,
Mhm.
that's, I will put that there. I mean, there's other on my company page, bluebridgepr.com. There's a few things there. But beyond that, I mean, there's some other places for DIY type stuff that kind of a behind the curtain. There's one company called a website called spinsucks.com,
Okay.
which is funny. But there's that, and then, I mean, there's some other ones, but yeah, I mean, you don't really have to look too far to find that, and I think and you can always do something, like I said, but for like a targeted effort, you know,
Mhm.
for somebody that is going to constantly on your behalf, like get in front of people, get in front of journalists, get in front of podcasters, bloggers, whomever, then I would. I mean, I'm not just saying this because it's what I do, but anybody that has a good um, working with a marketing agency or a salesperson or whatever, having somebody that focuses on that and does that really well, you're going to get so much farther, so much quicker.
That's right.
Um, but you can still do it, and you can. I've known people that have gotten, landed stuff in on podcasts and in like the Wall Street Journal. I mean, it happens.
Right. That's right.
Another place is a popular place. There's a lot of competition on it, but it's Haro, HARO, which is help a reporter out. You can
That's
go
yeah.
up and you can sign up for listings and email listings and that kind of thing, where reporters are looking for somebody to speak to about a certain topic. So a lot of times I've known people that have gotten their own stuff from that. So
Yeah.
it does happen. So better that you can start there, and then hopefully a business will build up, and then you can look
Yeah.
for an agency.
Yeah, that's great. And I've used Haro before, and I found that it became overwhelming. I think it's a great resource, but it became overwhelming because you get all these emails in your inbox, and you're just not really sure, which one do I respond to, and how much time do I spend doing this, and I'm saying all these, giving back all this feedback, and I'm not really sure where this is going, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great resource, but it can be overwhelming to say the least. It's tough,
Yeah.
I think really what it comes down to is people have a have to recognize the importance for it and then prioritize it, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times it has to do with personal brand is a harder thing to understand why to do it, maybe in certain industries, than it is for the company brand. Um, and appreciate that those resources, because I think that people always want to have a place to go, to look at stuff on your own when you're looking at growth for your business. Where do you go for, like, what resources do you call on? You have certain books that you recommend or podcasts you listen to?
Um, yeah, I mean, as far as PR stuff, there's a guy who I follow. His name is Michael Smart, and basically his audience is PR people, and
Okay.
he has positioned himself as an expert among that group of people, and so somebody that just a normal business owner probably wouldn't want to go that far down the rabbit hole in
Yeah.
the nuts and bolts of that level, because if
Right.
you did, you wouldn't have any time to do whatever it is that you do for your business.
Yeah.
But he is somebody that I've learned so much from. Beyond that, yeah, I mean, there's in the PR stuff. I mean, there's the PRSA, the Public Relations Society of America.
Okay.
Um, and there's some other PR level stuff, but beyond that, as far as just business things that I do, I mean, I'm a big follower of Donald Miller, who wrote a book called
Okay.
Story Brand,
Right.
where it's using the elements of story to help. What he talks about is more of a marketing
Mm-hmm.
side to it, but PR fits right into that as well. I mean, they go hand in hand in so many different ways. um, but it's about communicating, um, using the elements of story that in messaging, and is what I use it for in PR, that in stories and novels and movies, there's a few basic characters. There's a
Mm-hmm.
main character, like a protagonist, and a villain, and a like a guide. And so what a
Yeah.
lot of people do in their brands and their personal brand and their company brand is that they position themselves as the hero that is going
Mm-hmm.
to solve all their problems and do all these things, which is the wrong thing to do. Instead, you should position yourself as the guide, like the like Yoda to Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker, who is going to, tell him and give him the tools and the things to make him successful, to, defeat the Death Star and, win the day.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge thing, like a big thing in my business, is just helping people to understand the message that they're putting out there, whether it's marketing, whether it's PR, whether it's sales, that you're just there as somebody that's going to bring some tools and kind of show them, teach them how to fish in a lot of
Right.
ways. Have the message be that they're the ones that's going to be successful, and that what you have to offer is going to land that client or convert that customer or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
that's huge. It's just it's a huge
Yeah.
perspective, and was like like an aha moment for me in my business.
Yeah. That's great. As we're wrapping up here, what would be, if you could change the mind of a business owner about anything, PR, marketing, anything that you found in working with business owners, that you think they should change their mind about, what would that be?
Well, that's one of them, about perspective on,
Mm-hmm.
your brand, whether you're going to, whether you're going to kind of position yourself as an end all be all, or that guide type figure. That's definitely one of them. Something else, that's a tough one. Um,
I
I
stumped
think,
you finally.
just you did. I think just not, not having a one size fits all approach
Mm-hmm.
to business, and kind of taking, diving into the specifics, and really looking at something with unique and different eyes, which that's what I do. I mean, I'm able to look at something from the outside in when I work with clients. It's a little bit harder for you to do that with your own business.
Right.
But, I mean, even me, with things with my business, that it's like, there's that outside perspective that is so important, that, you can't see the forest through the trees, or whatever that saying is. It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
you're in the middle of it day in and day out, and it's hard for you to see that. And that's why people hire, that's why professional golfers have a golf coach. That's why, for that outside perspective.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's in taking that approach with yourself, but with also your customers and clients, that, you know, they're paying you for a reason. And you can't, it's hard to do a cookie cutter approach with, I mean, maybe some businesses you can, but, I find that more often than not, it's not the case.
Right. So before we go, where can people find you if they're looking for somebody to talk about PR? Where do they go to find you?
Mm-hmm. Um, bluebridgepr.com, blue, bridge with a B, pr.com. A lot of people say Blue Ridge, kind of rolls off the tongue that
Oh
way,
yeah.
but it's a bridge. Funny, I grew up in a small town that had a drawbridge, and it was blue, and that's just, it was
There
right
you go.
outside
There you go.
my backyard, so it was just a simple name. But,
Well,
yeah, bluebridgepr.com.
you spent a lot of time in the Blue Ridge Mountains too. So I mean, there's that. I
That's
mean,
true. That
that
that is
matters,
true.
but, you know,
Completely unrelated, but,
completely unrelated.
so there, my personal website, robbieharper.com, ROBBIE. So yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on, Twitter, all the social places. So those are the best places to find me and interact. And, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, I mean, I'm always up for the discussion, and, especially how personal branding relates to and can help leverage somebody's business to make them successful.
Most definitely. All right, Robbie. Thanks for being on. It's been a great conversation, and I expect to fully have you back at some point to dive deeper. Maybe we can do some use cases or something where we can dive into how, specifically how you've used PR for growth in a company, and kind of pick it apart just to give people an idea, I think, of how they can think about it in their company. I think that'd be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great. Love to do it.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, I really appreciate you tuning into this episode of Exploring Growth. I'm trying to get this in the hands of as many growing businesses as possible so they can take this practical wisdom and deploy it in their companies or with their teams. If you're getting some value out of this show and know someone who should listen as well, would you consider sharing it with them, or leave a positive review on the platform in which you're listening or watching? YouTube audience, leave a comment below with something you liked or your perspective on what we discussed. I'm grateful for everyone that tunes in every week. Let's keep exploring.